Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. In the last video in which I talked about this project, I showed you how I had an inventory system and how you could tell the player character to take weapons from that inventory and put it in their hand. But of course, a player might change their mind. They might take a couple of grenades, for example, from the inventory, and then they look at the enemies and they think, you know what, I actually think I should probably save these grenades for a tougher fight that might be coming later, and I can sort of rely on just my fists in this fight. And because that might happen, or similar situations, it would be useful to have a button that lets you put weapons back. So as you can see, I've started a battle here. I have a character with the starting setup of a pistol in the main hand and nothing in their offhand. Note, by the way, that I changed this to say main hand. It said in hand before. I can swap hands, of course, and you probably noticed there's a new button. When I've got the weapon in my main hand, it says stow main weapon, and if I swap it to my offhand, it says stow offhand weapon. And in fact, if I had a weapon in both hands, it would show both of those options. And I can click that if I want to, and that will change the pistol to be nothing, and it will also move the pistol into the inventory. So if I then choose to go into the inventory, we can see that, yep, there's a pistol there. I can also stow weapons within this screen. So I've got a pistol and a smoke grenade here. I can swap them as normal, but I still have the option to stow main weapon and stow offhand weapon if I want to before I return to the main screen. All right. So let's spend the rest of the video looking at the code that allows this to happen. So there are no new variables for this. There is a single new passage, the passage stow, and there's also some code in player character and inventory. The code in player character and inventory is almost identical. When I have code that's almost identical, I usually think about, well, can I make it exactly identical? Because if I make it exactly identical, then I can put it in its own passage and I can use includes. And that has the advantage that I only need to update the code in one place if I do decide I want to change it. Whereas having it in two places means, of course, that I have to update it twice. So I always ask whether that's worth doing. I decided in this case that it wasn't, but you know, that's a bit of a judgment call. Anyway, let's have a look at the new buttons. Now these are all old. I'm scrolling past stuff that I've already talked about in previous videos that relate to different other orders. So here we are at the new stuff. I will also say that I've slightly changed the swap hands button in that there's an if around it now. It's if weapon 0 does not equal offhand 0. That's what exclamation mark equals means. It means if the two things have different values, then print this button, whereas previously it would always print it. And the point of doing that is that if they have the same values, then swapping them isn't going to make anything different. So it's not worth having that as an option. So now that will only trigger, that button will only be there if you have two different weapons, or if you have a weapon in only one hand and the other hand is empty. All right, so let's look at the new stuff. We've got two sort of sets of code, or two sort of sections. Those two sections are almost the same, just as the code here and in inventory is almost the same. This one is to do with the stow main weapon button. It says if weapon 0 is greater than 0, then have this button whose text is stow main weapon and whose destination, once you're clicked, once you click it, is stow. And after you click it, but before you go to stow, set Z equal to 1. That is a variable that's going to keep track of which weapon, which hand we're not which weapon, but which hand we're taking a weapon from. We set Z equals 1, and we set Y equals whose go is it? Question mark. The reason for having Y equal to whose go is it? Question mark, is that in this bit of code we want to go to whose go is it after we stow the weapon. In the version in inventory, we want to go back to inventory. So we need a variable to keep track of where are we going to go to. This bit of code is almost the same as this one, except it refers to offhand 0. It says stow offhand weapon, and it sets Z equal to 2, not to 1. And then in inventory, we have once again, no, sorry. Sorry, I had quite a surprising amount of trouble finding my place in this. It's a pretty small page, but anyway, I managed to get confused. So again, here we have the swap hands with the does not, if weapon 0 does not equal offhand 0. And here we have the thing we want to look at today. And the only difference here between this and what we saw in player character is that we set Y equal to inventory. So it's going to work exactly the same. It's just going to go to a different place once it's finished. All right. So let's look at stow, where most of the code happens, I guess. So I have a little note here which says if Z equals 1, stow the weapon from $weapon. If Z equals 2, stow from $offhand, and that Y is the passage to go to after this. I think I accidentally moved a passage then, so I'll undo it. The first thing we're going to do, if we're going to stow a weapon, we need to find an empty slot to put it in inventory 0. And we're going to store that in $X. So we set $X equal to 0. We have a for loop using the temporary variable W, and it goes from 1 to being less than or equal to inventory underscore slots. Inventory underscore slots is the number of slots in a given character's inventory. It's currently 10, but it could be changed to be something else quite easily. I just picked that as an arbitrary number. And then we have an if. And the if is if ndef inventory 0W, which means if inventory 0W is not defined, it's never had a value put in it, or inventory 0W is equal to 0. If that's the case, then we've found a slot. We found an empty slot. And we set X equal to W, and we set W equal to inventory underscore slots. So why do we set W equal to inventory underscore slots? Well, that's because we only need to find one empty slot. We're not looking through this array and finding all the empty slots and doing something to them. We just need to find one. And if we find one, well, there's no point looking at the other slots. So we might as well set W equal to inventory slots, and then at the end of the loop, when it gets to /4, it will increase that by 1. So it'll be inventory underscore slots plus 1. It'll say, is W less than or equal to inventory underscore slots? No, it's not. It's actually equal to 1 more than that. So it will end. And so we'll save a fraction of a second. Really, it's a tiny amount of, because there's only 10 slots, we're not really saving a lot of time by not going through those other numbers. But we might, in another occasion, we might have a search that could involve, thousands of slots, and we might be doing this search sort of multiple times in a single go. And so in that case, if you only need to find one example of whatever you're looking for, well, then it probably is worth increasing these variables to the sort of maximum value so that it doesn't bother going through all the others. And it's just a good habit to get into. And then at the end of the for loop, we're going to have either a value, which is an empty slot, in X, so 1 to 10, or X is going to be 0, meaning we couldn't find a slot. And then we're going to act based on whether X is 0. Well, if that's the case, we just have a message. Sorry, no space, can't be done. We're not going to do what you want it to do. Else if z equals 1, which means we're stowing the weapon from the weapon array, we set inventory 0x equal to weapon 0. We set weapon 0 equal to 0. So we move that weapon from our weapon array into the inventory array effectively. Then we set print underscore dist equal to 1. The point of doing that is only for if we're coming here from player character and going to whose go is it, because then we will have the opportunity to print the battlefield again, and we want to take that opportunity. We want to see the battlefield again after we stow our weapon. If we're going back to inventory, we won't have the opportunity to print the battlefield, but setting print underscore dist won't do any harm, because in fact we set it to 1 at the top of inventory anyway, so it won't make any difference. So that's if z equals 1. If z equals 2, we do exactly the same thing, except we set inventory 0x equals offhand 0, and we set offhand 0 equal to 0. And having done that, we then include y, i.e. we go to wherever we had stored as the place that we want to go to after we finished with this. And that is how you stow weapons. I'll leave it there for today. What I'm going to do in future videos, there is a more efficient way of swapping variables that I want to show people. And also I want to get on to two-handed weapons, making sure that you can't have a two-handed weapon with another weapon. So one of those is probably going to be what's in the next video. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.